Have you ever wondered why some people seem to walk through life with an invisible shield of protection, while others struggle constantly despite their prayers and devotion? Today, you are about to discover a spiritual secret that has remained hidden from many, but was deeply taught and lived by the saint of the stigmata himself. This isn't just another prayer or religious practice. This is a mystical teaching that can fundamentally transform how divine grace flows into your life, especially when applied on one of the most powerful days in the Christian calendar. The secret I'm about to share with you involves 3 simple words that, when spoken with genuine faith and devotion on Corpus Christi, can open the floodgates of grace, protection, and both spiritual and material abundance in your life. But before I reveal these 3 transformative words, you need to understand something crucial about this teaching. This isn't superstition or some magical formula. This is a profound mystical practice based on the deep love and reverence that Padre Pio had for the Most Blessed Sacrament, a devotion that marked every moment of his extraordinary life. Throughout his life, this holy friar from Pietrelcina demonstrated an understanding of spiritual laws that most of us barely glimpse. He knew that certain words, spoken at certain times, with the right heart disposition, could literally move heaven and earth. He witnessed miracles not because he was special, but because he understood how to align himself perfectly with God's will and timing. And today, I'm going to share with you one of his most powerful teachings about the sacred words that can transform your relationship with divine providence. The timing of when you speak these words is absolutely critical, and Corpus Christi represents one of the most spiritually charged moments in the entire liturgical year. When you understand why this particular day holds such tremendous power, and when you learn to speak these 3 words with the same faith and intention that Padre Pio taught, you'll begin to experience a level of divine intervention in your life that you may have thought was reserved only for the saints. But remember, sainthood isn't about being perfect. It's about being perfectly surrendered to God's will. To understand the profound impact these 3 words can have on your life, you must first grasp why Corpus Christi is considered one of the most spiritually powerful days in the Christian calendar. This solemnity celebrates the real presence of Jesus Christ in the Eucharist. It's the day when heaven itself contemplates with wonder how Jesus, true God and true man, makes himself present on every altar throughout the world. On this day, the entire earth becomes a global sanctuary, with angels accompanying every procession and the souls in purgatory crying out for intercession. Padre Pio understood this mystical reality better than perhaps any saint of modern times. He would often say, "If you knew the value of a single Mass, you would cry with joy." Now imagine the spiritual value of an entire day dedicated exclusively to honoring the real presence of Jesus in the Eucharist, that is Corpus Christi. On this day, the veil between heaven and earth becomes remarkably thin, and Christ's heart opens wide, pouring out abundant graces to those who approach with faith and proper intention. The Holy Friar taught that on Corpus Christi, heaven is especially attentive to every word that proceeds from our mouths. This isn't mere theological speculation. Padre Pio lived this reality. He experienced daily mystical phenomena precisely because he understood how to position himself spiritually to receive God's extraordinary graces. He knew that words spoken with faith on such sacred occasions carry enormous spiritual weight, capable of moving the heart of God in ways that might seem impossible to our limited human understanding. This is why the 3 words I'm about to reveal to you aren't just any words. They are specifically chosen for their power to resonate with the heart of Christ present in the Eucharist. When spoken on Corpus Christi, with the right disposition of heart, these words become like keys that unlock spiritual doors that may have remained closed in your life for years. They represent a complete surrender to divine providence that opens channels of grace you may never have accessed before. The moment has arrived to reveal the 3 words that have transformed countless lives through Padre Pio's teaching. In many of his homilies and in conversations with his spiritual children, this holy priest would consistently return to one phrase that contained these 3 essential words: "Lord, I trust completely." Yes, these are the 3 words that Padre Pio taught his followers to say, especially during adoration of the Blessed Sacrament, and most particularly on days like Corpus Christi. Lord, I trust completely. Why these specific words? because they represent a complete act of abandonment to divine providence. They are a declaration of faith, surrender, and total entrustment to God's will. Padre Pio always taught, "Trust in God is the key that opens all closed doors in heaven." When you pronounce these 3 words on Corpus Christi, you are making a public act of faith in the real presence of Christ. You are acknowledging His power, His mercy, and His capacity to completely transform your life in ways you cannot even imagine. These words might seem simple, even ordinary, but their power lies not in their complexity but in their profound simplicity. Throughout salvation history, God has consistently chosen simple means to accomplish extraordinary things. A shepherd's staff became the instrument to part the Red Sea. 5 loaves and 2 fish fed thousands. Water became wine. And 3 simple words of complete trust can become the catalyst for divine intervention in your life. The key is understanding that these words must flow from the deepest place in your heart, not merely from your lips. If you believe that this teaching can change your life the same way it has changed the lives of so many devotees of Padre Pio, write in the comments, "I am ready for this blessing." And don't forget to subscribe to our channel to receive more of these powerful spiritual teachings. Remember, your engagement helps us reach more souls who desperately need to hear these life-changing messages from the saints. Understanding when and how to speak these transformative words is absolutely crucial for their effectiveness. This isn't about mindless repetition or treating them like some magical incantation. The mystical teaching that Padre Pio left us requires specific spiritual conditions and precise timing to unleash its full power. Listen carefully to these instructions, because following them exactly as the saint taught them can mean the difference between experiencing a superficial prayer and witnessing genuine miraculous intervention in your life. First, you must speak these 3 words immediately after receiving Holy Communion, while Jesus is sacramentally present within you. This is the moment of supreme intimacy between your soul and Christ, when the barrier between human and divine becomes as thin as it will ever be in this life. If you cannot receive communion for any reason, make a spiritual communion at the moment of the procession or during adoration of the Blessed Sacrament, gazing intently at the monstrance or the image of Christ's body. The visual focus helps concentrate your entire being on the reality of Christ's presence. While speaking these words, you must simultaneously visualize your entire life being placed into Jesus' hands. This means consciously offering Him your fears, your debts, your illnesses, your family conflicts, your career struggles, your relationship problems, absolutely everything. Hold nothing back, because partial surrender yields partial results. Padre Pio taught that God cannot fill hands that are still grasping onto earthly securities and human solutions. Your grip must completely loosen from everything you've been trying to control. Finally, conclude mentally with this interior supplication. Jesus, in the Eucharist, I trust in your mercy and in your power to completely transform my life. This final prayer seals your act of surrender and specifically invokes Christ's Eucharistic power, the same power that transforms bread and wine into His body and blood, to transform every circumstance of your life. Remember, the same Jesus, who can change the substance of bread while leaving its appearance unchanged, can change the substance of your struggles while working through ordinary circumstances. To truly understand the depth of these 3 words, we must examine what Padre Pio called the 3 pillars of complete trust in divine providence. The first pillar is recognition, acknowledging that God's wisdom infinitely surpasses your own understanding. When you say Lord, you are declaring that there is a power greater than yourself, greater than your circumstances, and greater than any problem you face. This isn't passive resignation, but rather active acknowledgement of divine sovereignty over every aspect of your existence. The second pillar is relationship, understanding that this Almighty God desires an intimate, personal connection with you. The word I in your declaration isn't insignificant. It represents your individual soul making a conscious choice to engage with the divine. Padre Pio often reminded his spiritual children that God doesn't want generic, impersonal worship, but rather the specific surrender of each unique heart. Your trust matters to God not because He needs it, but because He desires the freedom that comes to you through it. The third pillar is totality, the completeness implied in the word completely. Partial trust is like being partially pregnant. It's an impossibility. Either you trust God with everything, or you're still holding back in areas where you think you know better than He does. Padre Pio discovered that divine intervention is directly proportional to human surrender. The areas of your life where you experience the least peace and the most struggle are often the areas where you've maintained the tightest control. These three pillars work together to create what Padre Pio called the architecture of miracles. A spiritual structure so solid that it can support the weight of divine intervention in your life. When recognition, relationship, and totality combine in your heart, you create the perfect conditions for God to work in ways that will astound you. This is why these three simple words have the power to transform lives. They contain within themselves the complete formula for effective prayer and spiritual breakthrough. There's a profound reason why Corpus Christi serves as the optimal moment for this sacred declaration, and it relates to what spiritual masters call the science of divine timing. Just as farmers understand that certain seeds must be planted at specific times for optimal growth, spiritual practitioners recognize that certain prayers carry maximum power when offered during particular liturgical seasons. Corpus Christi represents the spiritual equivalent of the most fertile soil and perfect weather conditions for the seeds of trust and surrender. On this solemnity, the entire Catholic Church throughout the world simultaneously focuses its attention on the Eucharistic presence of Christ. This creates what mystics have long understood as a spiritual resonance. When millions of souls turn their hearts toward the same divine reality at the same time, it amplifies the spiritual power available to each individual participant. Your personal act of trust doesn't occur in isolation, but becomes part of a global chorus of faith that reaches the throne of God with unprecedented intensity. Padre Pio understood this mystical principle and taught that our individual prayers gain tremendous power when they align with the universal prayer of the Church. Think of it like adding your voice to a massive choir. Your individual note becomes part of something infinitely larger and more beautiful than what you could produce alone. When you speak those three words of complete trust on Corpus Christi, you're joining your voice to centuries of saints and countless contemporary believers who are making the same declaration of faith. This is also why the saint emphasized the importance of proper preparation for this moment. You cannot simply show up unprepared and expect maximum results. The days leading up to Corpus Christi should be spent in prayer, fasting, and spiritual purification. Confession, if possible, clears the channels through which grace flows. Meditation on the Eucharistic mysteries attunes your heart to receive what God wants to give you. Like preparing good soil before planting precious seeds, preparing your soul before Corpus Christi ensures the best possible outcome from your act of trust. When you speak these three words with genuine faith on Corpus Christi, you initiate what Padre Pio called the Great Transformation, a spiritual process that often unfolds in unexpected ways. Many people make the mistake of looking for immediate, dramatic changes and become discouraged when their external circumstances don't instantly improve. But the saint taught that divine transformation usually begins in the invisible realm of the soul before manifesting in visible circumstances. The first transformation occurs in your relationship with worry and anxiety. People who consistently practice this form of complete trust report a gradual but unmistakable shift in how they respond to challenges. Instead of the familiar spiral of fear and panic when problems arise, they find themselves naturally turning to prayer and maintaining inner peace even in difficult situations. This isn't positive thinking or psychological manipulation. It's the supernatural fruit of genuine surrender to divine providence. The second transformation manifests in your perception of God's presence in daily life. Those who embrace Padre Pio's teaching about complete trust begin to notice what they call divine coincidences, circumstances aligning in ways that seem too perfect to be mere chance, unexpected help arriving exactly when needed, doors opening just as others close. The saint taught that God is always working in our lives, but our anxiety and lack of trust often blind us to His interventions. Complete trust clears our spiritual vision. The third and most profound transformation occurs in your capacity to receive divine love. Padre Pio discovered that our inability to trust God completely often stems from deep wounds that make us doubt His goodness toward us personally. As you practice complete trust, especially through this Corpus Christi declaration, these wounds begin to heal. You start to truly believe, not just intellectually but in your heart, that God desires your happiness and well-being even more than you do. This inner healing then becomes the foundation for all other positive changes in your life. How can you recognize when your declaration of complete trust is producing genuine spiritual fruit? Padre Pio taught his followers to watch for specific signs that indicate their surrender is moving from mere words to authentic spiritual reality. The first sign is what he called holy indifference, a peaceful detachment from outcomes that allows you to work diligently toward your goals while remaining internally serene regardless of results. This isn't laziness or lack of care, but rather the freedom that comes from knowing that your ultimate security rests in God's hands, not in your achievements. The second sign is increased compassion for others, particularly those who are struggling with the same issues you once found overwhelming. When you experience the peace that comes from complete trust in divine providence, you naturally want to share that peace with others. You'll find yourself becoming less judgmental and more understanding, less focused on others' faults and more aware of their hidden struggles. This expanded capacity for love is one of the most reliable indicators that your spiritual practice is authentic rather than self-centered. The third sign involves your prayer life becoming more conversational and less desperate. Instead of approaching God primarily when you need something, you'll find yourself wanting to spend time in His presence simply for the joy of the relationship. Your prayers will become less about changing God's mind and more about aligning your heart with His will. Padre Pio taught that this shift in prayer indicates that trust is becoming your spiritual default setting rather than something you have to work hard to achieve. The final sign is perhaps the most practical. You'll begin to notice that solutions to your problems emerge more naturally and with less stress on your part. This doesn't mean life becomes problem-free, but rather that you develop what the saint called supernatural resourcefulness, an ability to find creative solutions and unexpected help that seems to come from beyond your own natural abilities. When complete trust becomes real rather than theoretical, heaven begins to collaborate with your efforts in remarkable ways. The ultimate goal of this Corpus Christi practice isn't just to experience one powerful moment of spiritual connection, but to establish complete trust as the foundation of your daily Christian life. Padre Pio lived in constant awareness that every moment offered an opportunity to deepen his surrender to divine providence. He understood that the 3 words spoken on Corpus Christi were meant to become the underlying attitude of his entire existence, not just a special occasion prayer. Incorporating this trust into your daily routine requires what the saint called micro-surrenders, small moments throughout each day when you consciously choose to release control and trust God's wisdom. When you're stuck in traffic, instead of fuming about the delay, you can whisper, "Lord, I trust completely." When you receive disappointing news, before allowing anxiety to take hold, you can make that same declaration. These repeated acts of trust gradually transform your default responses to life's challenges. The beauty of this practice lies in its simplicity and accessibility. You don't need special circumstances or perfect conditions to practice complete trust. Whether you're changing a diaper, sitting in a business meeting, dealing with a difficult family member, or facing a health crisis, these 3 words can become your spiritual anchor. Padre Pio demonstrated that sanctity isn't found in extraordinary circumstances, but in extraordinary fidelity to God within ordinary circumstances. As you continue to live this teaching, you'll discover that complete trust isn't a destination you reach, but a journey you're continuously taking. Each day brings new opportunities to choose trust over worry, surrender over control, faith over fear. The Corpus Christi declaration serves as your annual renewal of this commitment. But the daily practice of these 3 words becomes the means by which you transform from someone who occasionally trusts God into someone whose entire life radiates the peace that comes from complete confidence in divine providence. Don't wait for the perfect moment to begin this transformation. The moment to change your life through this powerful teaching is now, tonight.